And it's BOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. And hello, everybody. Today is Tuesday. Welcome to True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. And because today is Tuesday, you can say hello to Snoopy here. Now, firstly, I would like to give a shout out to Zodiac, the Face of Evil, who asked me a question on the most recent Zodiac Monday. And he said, were you aware of the passing of Dr. Howard Davis, who was the author of the Zodiac Manson Connection? And the honest answer is no, I was not. I did not know that Howard had passed away. So that's the reason for this episode here, the Zodiac Manson Hour, here on True Crime Talk Radio. And there's actually a two-part reason for using that in the title. As some of you know, I used to work with the Zodiac Killer channel, and we put out content only from time to time. For example, we did the three-part documentary series Obsession into Darkness, and then the Interview with the Expert series. But the Zodiac Killer channel once explored doing regular content. One idea I came up with was what was called the tie-in series, where maybe once a month there would be video that would come out about cases that were related to the Zodiac Killer, but not exclusively Zodiac, such as the Manson family, which I'll be discussing in this episode here, and also the Golden State Killer, the Black Dahlia Avenger. Lots of other true crime stories have someone involved with them that is a Zodiac Killer suspect. But I also came up with the idea of the Zodiac Manson Hour. But this is one that I never told them about. This is one that I never voiced because, well, it's almost just one of those things that you get that comes to mind when you're daydreaming and doesn't mean you're actually going to go through it with it 100%. And firstly, we have Tyler Scott here. Hey, Tyler, how's it going? Don Spain is here, says, good morning, Ned and chat. Good morning to you too, Don. And Charlie Don't Serve says, can't wait for the Manson talk, Black Dahlia 2 at some point. I'm going to try to do as much as I can here on True Crime Talk Radio in the morning, coming to you live every Tuesday and Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But also, that was just something that came to mind. But there was a reason why it came to mind. And that is because I was a fan of the Tate LaBianca radio program at the time, which is hosted by Brian Davis and sometimes with Tana Laufenberg as well. And they do a regular segment about the Manson family. And because listen to someone else's show, I get ideas. They're things that I want to respond to. That's the whole reason why Black Box Online Radio exists. But because this is an episode where we're going to pay tribute to the late Howard Davis, I would actually like to read his obituary, and this is from ompax.com. And it says, Dr. Howard Davis of Santa Monica, California. The community is mourning the loss of Dr. Howard Davis, who passed away suddenly on July 4th of 2024. Dr. Davis was a beloved pastor, father, brother, mentor, friend, and counselor. His passing at such an unexpected time has left a profound void for his community, church, and colleagues. Dr. Davis was a renowned scholar in biblical issues and a pastor. He was well versed in Greek, Latin, and Aramaic, which added incomparable depth to his weekly biblical lessons and sermons. Known as a prayer warrior, he was always able to help anyone in need. In addition to his pastoral work, Dr. Davis was a genius-level scientist who developed holistic natural products and supplements to make life easier and to allow people to lead healthier lives. He possessed an encyclopedic knowledge on a wide range of topics and authored several books on Christianity, the Mormon religion, and even the Zodiac Killer. And Robert H. is here. Good morning to you too, Robert H. Cat Daddy Steve, welcome. And yes, I was just reading the obituary for Dr. Howard Davis, author of the Zodiac Manson Connection, who recently passed away. And I'm going to say hello to Snoopy real fast. So, the Zodiac Manson Connection is one... Snoopy didn't do his job. The Zodiac Manson Connection is a theory that only gets discussed from time to time because it's a very complicated theory, and it's one that isn't necessarily widely regarded as being accurate. And I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Howard Davis for the Zodiac Killer channel's Interview with the Expert series. And in terms of paying tribute to him, everybody has the right to share their findings. Everybody has the right to voice their genuine theories if they do indeed believe it. But as far as the Manson Connection, It was centered on an individual named Bruce Davis being the Zodiac Killer. Bruce Davis was Charles Manson's right-hand man, and he was somebody who may have had a lot of assistance in the creation of the Zodiac Killer persona, but Howard Davis also accused Charles Manson directly of orchestrating and masterminding the Zodiac Manson connection. And this is the stuff that he really came under fire for. And there's a video out there from Bad Things True Crime, which is a channel that maybe isn't the most in depth with some of their videos, but they did a Zodiac Manson video one more time on Bad Things True Crime. And their video more or less took the strong stance that this entire Zodiac Manson connection is just based on hearsay testimonies and just ideas that are coming to people from different areas. Like, it's based on the concept of somebody told person X this, then person X told person Y that, and then eventually it gets to person Z. Ray Grant is here. Ray Grant says, Howard was a good guy and a great researcher. My own research benefited great from his. Sorry to see him go. Well, that's the next point, though, Ray. Because here's the thing with Howard Davis. A lot of people heavily criticized the Zodiac Manson connection. And there was another writer out there who released a book called Manson Behind the Scenes. And his name is Bill Nelson. And today, I actually sat down and I thought, you know what? I'm going to get a copy of Bill Nelson's book because I'm going to be talking about the Zodiac Manson connection. I'm finally just going to sit down and read it. Turns out, not for sale on Amazon.com at all. Firstly, I read Kindle copies of books now. That's just the way I do things. I've always had a stronger connection with the electronic screens. It just allows me to focus more easily. Not available. Secondarily, the print version on Amazon wasn't even available. And I know that you can buy them secondhands, but I really need the electronic copy to absorb the information. So there are all these types of criticisms that Howard Davis and Bill Nelson are receiving. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, Howard Davis was very influential on lots of people's research. Ray Grant says that here. But Howard Davis interviewed Kathleen Johns, a survivor of a possible Zodiac attack. He interviewed Diana Zelms, the widow of Eric Zelms, one of the Zodiac Killer witnesses, because Eric Zelms was killed in the line of duty on January 1st of 1970. And he definitely put in honest efforts. And this is where you can see a blend of things where, you know, I recognize his contributions. I recognize that he actually did some groundbreaking work. And, Tom Voigt of ZodiacKiller.com praised Howard Davis for a lot of things. And there are also stories about how Howard Davis was the person who first obtained the Donna Last Wanted poster that we see that even has the cipher at the bottom. And, so he does deserve credit. He deserves credit where credit is due. I was simply sharing the process of how I learned about his material because he was the guy behind the Zodiac Manson Connection. And, the Manson Connection is a different type of theory because Howard Davis, though, didn't seem to back down from a particular point. And that was that his suspect, Bruce Davis, may have been out of the country in December of 1968. Howard Davis simply said, firstly, that's unconfirmed because the travel records cannot necessarily be documented. But also, it would be so much simpler and easier to justify and explain if he were to just say that, oh yeah, well, I think Bruce Davis was the Zodiac Killer, the author of the letters. I think Charles Manson masterminded the murders. But if Howard Davis had specific suspects for all of the crime scenes that were in line with this possibility of Bruce Davis being out of the country in December of 1968. Secondarily, I mean, they're just, if he just would need to put specific people in place about who he thought committed the murders, when, how, and why. And how Bruce Davis was actually out of the country for maybe 5 or 6 months. We don't necessarily know. Could be from October of 1968 to June of 1969, something like that. Mr. JSV is here and he says, hello. And Ray Grant says he also interviewed William Crowe. Oh, I didn't know about that, Ray. Was he the person who obtained the description from William Crowe about how there was a shift in William Crowe's testimony? William Crowe was a witness to a possible Zodiac Killer sighting at Lake Herman Road on December 20th of 1968. Before the Lake Herman Road murders, there were two people who drove into the parking lot, William Crow and his girlfriend. And I believe William Crow is actually driving his girlfriend's car. The car belonged to her father, and it was a new sports car, but he got out to tinker with the motor. And then this suspicious vehicle pulled into the parking lot at Lake Earn Road, which is mostly a turnoff on the side of the road. And then William Crow was bothered by this, so he got back in the driver's seat to drive away, and then that car began following him. And at first, William Crow was the person who said that there were just two people in the car. They were Caucasian males, but other than that, he couldn't make out any discernible features. Then, when William Crow was interviewed a couple decades later, he had a reversal, a flip, and he began to say that the person that he saw driving the car matched the Zodiac Killer composite sketch, crew cut, haircut, receding hairline, glasses, and there was a single male. So, in short, William Crow really shot himself in the foot, and I don't know how necessarily reliable his testimony would be. That has no bearing on any researcher about if some witness changes their story. Well, if you interview somebody and they just change their story, then that is it. So, some other issues with the Zodiac Manson connection, and this is my own personal observation. When I'm watching content about the Manson family, I don't hear any clues that give it away. Because remember, it's not only that Bruce Davis was the Zodiac Killer, it's also that Charles Manson masterminded the Manson murders. And I think that the problem is I'm listening to these interviews with the Manson girls. Not once do I hear anybody slip up and say, oh, yeah, well, Charles Manson set something up in California, yeah, in the north, and they were doing these trips to San Francisco, and they were, sending Bruce up to the Bay Area. Not once do I hear any of that coming out. And Ray Grant says Howard Davis interviewed William Crow circa 2004. Then a follow-up was done by Soren Korsgaard. Ah, yes. But this is what Tom Voigt likes to point out, that William Crow had already changed his story before the Soren Korsgaard interview, right? And then, so Soren Korsgaard was faced with this piece of contradictory information. And, well, I mean, there's a video about that on Tom Voigt's channel. And, but yes, he interviewed him around 2004. That makes sense according to the timeline. All right, though. So the Manson family, were they responsible for the Zodiac murders? Charles Manson is someone who operated in a rather different way. And versely, Manson gets included in these discussions about serial killers. Yet, I really haven't seen a whole lot of evidence that Manson was a serial killer. I would suspect that he was, but Manson's MO seemed to be that he was instructing his followers to commit the murders, and then he thought that that would absolve him of guilt, that he wouldn't be held responsible or liable if he told people to do it. And one thing about Charles Manson is he may have talked in circles, but he wasn't dumb. And I even said this once back in like 2012, just in the comment section on YouTube. Half the things he says make perfect sense. The other half is just whoosh kebab Roth Vantage, just like talking in nonsensical ramblings. And I think a lot of that was done by design. Most people think that a lot of things are done by design. So Manson is somebody who seemed like he was kind of aware of this. He liked jerking people around, or the fact that if he were able to talk in circles, it's sharing a nonsensical set of ramblings, and then people are able to project their own meaning onto it. That's one thing. But another point is that Manson was exposed to Scientology when he was in prison prior to the foundation and creation of the quote-unquote family. So Manson is somebody who is not necessarily a complete lunatic. He's a little bit of a lunatic, but he also knew how to use certain types of tactics to present information in a way that people can understand. Because I have an episode here on this channel, an old black box recording called My Story of Charles Manson, that talks about that, if you were to just get up there and start talking like Charles Manson, going in circles, people might not take a liking to it. There actually is a method that Charles Manson was using. And we have something here from Ray Grant where he says, William Crowe didn't change his story. He clarified details that were ambiguous in the original statement. Well, now, is this true, Ray? Because is it true that he said that the first time he saw that there were two Caucasian males in the car and that he couldn't see any discernible features? And then when he was interviewed in 2004, he said that there was a single male in the car. I mean, that's like, how would he be able to say both those things without changing a statement? Either that or I have misunderstood a particular detail. I'd love to hear more. And Captain Jenks says, was anybody from the Manson family's handwriting checked for matches to the Zodiac letters? Okay, Captain Jenks. This ties into the next thing with the Zodiac Manson connection. And that is that Howard Davis's theory, like I said, based on the set of storytelling, source A, source B, source C, or I said source X, source Y, source Z. Howard Davis claimed, and Bill Nelson too, that they found a hood and a knife and evidence that would tie the suspect to the Lake Berryessa stabbing and the Zodiac Killer's activities. However, they had just been through the most expensive trial in the world, and they're thinking that, all right, this guy, Bruce Davis, he's already going to jail for life. I mean, even if he was the Zodiac Killer, we're not going to bring him to the Bay Area and have another trial that's going to go on for months and cost another $1 million when he's already going to jail for life or death at the time. Death, because the Manson family was sentenced to death, and that was before their sentences were commuted. So that is something about, now you're asking about handwriting analysis. I know that Howard Davis and Bill Nelson did things like that independently, but you were asking if law enforcement and the members of like the FBI did analysis on Bruce Davis's handwriting or someone else from the Manson family. That I'm not sure of. But for the Zodiac Manson connection to work, it would have to be Bruce Davis writing the letters, because another part of the Zodiac Manson connection is that Bruce Davis wrote the 1974 Exorcist letter, but Bruce Davis was already convicted for murder for participating in the murders of Gary Hinman and Shorty Shea. And this is something we always have to remember with the Manson family. They were responsible for the Tate LaBianca murders, but it's really the Tate LaBianca Hinman Shea murders. And Gary Hinman and Shorty Shea, of course, they were murdered by the Manson family. Let's just leave it at that. And then Bruce Davis is in prison in 1974. Yet Howard Davis believed that Bruce Davis wrote the Exorcist letter from prison, and that's why he left out the line, "This is the Zodiac speaking," to introduce the letter. Because the Exorcist letter begins with, "I saw and think that The Exorcist was the best satirical comedy ever, signed yours truly." It does not say, "This is the Zodiac speaking." And some people simply think that it was not an authentic communication. That's one. And other people think that it is an authentic communication, the final authentic communication. And I believe that it is. And it seems like the authorities believe that the Exorcist letter was. But if Bruce Davis wrote that, he would have had to have been incarcerated at the time. And Ray Grant says, "I'm about to pull on the Pittsburgh Parkway. I will add later in the comments." Yes, please, Ray, because I'd love to get some follow-up things about that. And Captain Jenks says, "Was anybody from the..." Oh, yes, I read Captain Jenks's one. And Lacey says, "I'm obsessed with the Manson murders." I think a lot of us get obsessed with the Manson murders because they don't make a lot of sense without all of the information. They don't make a lot of sense if you don't know how the pieces fit together. And some individuals, like the previously mentioned Brian Davis and Tana Laufenberg, really try to piece everything back. And somebody even asked me this today because I was talking about it. They were saying, was Manson really the way they say he was? And I'm like, some people just say it was all about drugs, right? That, oh, well, they were trying to intercept a drug deal and that was a bust. And then people went crazy because they were high on things themselves, because they were high on speed at the time. So they just went berserk. First text, the girls followed, and that it was not cold and calculated. I think at this point, we are able to say that this official narrative makes no sense at all, that it's a little bit ridiculous. Let's look at the official narrative of what people are saying, that Charles Manson instructed his followers, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, not really Linda Kasabian, but Patricia Krenwinkel, to go to the house 10050 Cielo Drive and to just kill everybody in the house, to drive fear into the heart of a record producer named Terry Melcher because he didn't get his record deal, because he didn't get his contract. And I don't necessarily think that anybody truly believes that now. They put it in all of the mainstream documentaries. It was done to drive fear into the heart of Terry Melcher. So you're going to murder people in a house where he no longer lives? I can think of some better ways to scare people other than murdering a bunch of individuals in a house where he doesn't necessarily live. I think that that's a little bit nonsensical. Now, if you wanted to make the case that Charles Manson knew Dennis Wilson from the Beach Boys, and it wasn't even so much about getting a record deal, it's just they took one of his songs and they changed some things, and he felt that he didn't get the appropriate credit, or they're taking his music and they're not being fair and honest with him, and then he told them to murder everybody in the house because that house symbolized the establishment, and a set of murders were planned, and the next night they murdered Lino and Rosemary LaBianca at Waverly because Lino LaBianca was in the possession of a black phone book that had the phone numbers of all the people from the music industry. Lino LaBianca may have been mixed up a little bit with organized crime. And I mean, by organized crime, I just mean like under the table dealings. Not like Lino LaBianca was Al Capone or anything like that, but mixed up with some illegal black market business. So he would have been in the possession of a phone book that had the names of Hollywood elites and music elites, more, excuse me. Now, if you want to talk about that, I'll listen to you a little bit more. But a lot of people have pointed out that the individuals who were murdered at Cielo Drive were caught up in the drug trade themselves, and drug deal gone wrong. I used to be completely opposed to that theory in the past. Now I'm a little bit more open-minded to it. And as far as the just conventional narrative, I think that it could only make sense if you were just to say that it was a symbolic set of murders, that it was just about murdering people because Charles Manson knew that that house was frequented by media elites, and he just wanted the entire establishment to come crumbling down. Cat Daddy Steve says Tom O'Neill has the most logical circumstantial evidentiary thesis. Oh yes, Tom O'Neill has done great stuff. But Cat Daddy Steve, when Tom O'Neill, author of the book Chaos about the Manson murders, was posed with the question of what was the motive for the Tate LaBianca murders, he simply said, I can't tell you. He said it's one of the largest audiences that he could on the Joe Rogan podcast. He just said, I can't tell you. Now, he said there is evidence for the drug deal gone wrong theory. He also pointed out that there was evidence that the people at Cielo Drive were targeted the night before, that the power was cut at a different house the night before, and they even called an electrician to come on over. Maybe something was set up before, and that plan was X'd for a particular reason. So Tom O'Neill has done great stuff. He spent 20 years working on the book Chaos. He definitely is not somebody who has messed around, but I think, though, that the questions that I want the answers to just turn into, I don't know, I can't tell you, and I can't talk about that. But I don't put Tom O'Neill down at all, and I, of course, recommend all of his material. I want more from Tom O'Neill. We all do. I think that's just the long and short of it. And we have one here from Lacey who says, didn't you say you were in West Virginia? If so, me too. Well, Lacey, always coming to you from West Virginia at heart. I'm actually coming to you from the south of the Philippines right now, but for years I did the show from West Virginia. Lacey, do you mind sharing whereabouts in West Virginia are you? I'm almost a lifelong West Virginian. I lived in Maryland from 0 to 7. When I was 7, my parents divorced, 1995, so we moved to West Virginia, and I've been back and forth ever since, moving in and out of that state ever since. I'm going to chill with Snoopy for a second. And we have another one here from Cat Daddy Steve, who says LaBianca was embezzling and stealing from family businesses and about to be tossed out of the business that he started. Oh, and Lacey's from Raleigh County. Okay, though. So the LaBianca thing, caught up with illegal business. That's the heart and soul of it. Caught up with some type of activities where he's not a saint. There, because when I first learned about the Tate LaBianca murders, all right, Sharon Tate was the wife of Roman Polanski, famous movie director. She's an actress. Abigail Folger is murdered. She's a financial elite, the heiress to the Folgers coffee fortune. Jay Sebring was the stylist of the stars. These people are more or less some type of elites, some type. But then you have the LaBianca murders, where Lino LaBianca is described as a supermarket businessman, executive owner, manager, or something to that effect. And Rosemary LaBianca was described as a server. And I was just like, whoa, wait a second. How are you going from murdering these people, murdering elites to drive fear into the heart of Terry Melcher, to just saying that they murdered two people at Waverly? Again, the official narrative is rather crummy, but I began to think that it has to do more about some type of illegal business and operations. And Robert H. says, do you have a favorite Roman Polanski movie, Ned? Now, Robert, I don't have a lot of favorites, but the film The Ghostwriter, that was directed by Roman Polanski, has a big connection to me. And that is because I was, like 21, 22 at the time. And my friend said he wanted to show me this movie from Roman Polanski. He said, Roman Polanski may have done some illegal things in his personal life. You guys know what I'm talking about. But do you have a favorite movie? And I mean, like, no, he said, just like, do you want to come over and watch this movie? So I did. And, I watched The Ghostwriter. And I loved how that film, it's with Ewan McGregor, and it starts out very light. And my friend and I were watching this, and we're just laughing at all the jokes. And by the middle of the film, it gets a little bit more serious. And by the end, it's a very, very dark movie. And it's almost like the layers of an onion just get peeled and removed. And I thought, I want to write something like that. And I went home and I started writing the largest story in the book, Down the Dark Lane. I wrote that story back when I was, as I said, about 21 or 22, probably 22 at the time, based on where I was living. So the film The Ghostwriter, directed by Roman Polanski, is one that I have the biggest connection to. But of course, I loved Rosemary's Baby. He directed Macbeth, and that was another very good. He did a very good on-screen Macbeth. But the thing about The Ghostwriter is, it had that impact on me where I was like, I want to create something like this. I think that this is a brilliant model. And if anybody would like to check that out, I have my audiobooks here on YouTube for free. I released them in print form, but those are no longer available. And firstly, there is the White Horse Killer saga, which is based on the Zodiac Manson Connection. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But the story Down the Dark Lane is a standalone. And some of the elements were borrowed for Killer on a White Horse, my first book. But again, it was just that. It was like, I wanted to write a type of story where you would just get more and more intense with the storyline. You would become more and more intricate, or you would be revealing different layers of the story to get to the core. Now, that's one thing. As far as the White Horse Killer saga goes, there will be a fourth installment, and thank you so much to everybody who has been listening to those audiobooks. The first one was Killer on a White Horse, a story of the evening watchman. And the reason why I wanted to base it on the Zodiac Manson Connection was full credit to Howard Davis, the man of the hour. And that is that I loved this concept for a fictional piece, about how you have a figure like Charles Manson, who is this type of cult leader, or just somebody who you can't tell if he's very smart or very dumb, but he's influential. And then you have the Zodiac Killer, this cryptic individual who's mailing in serial killer letters and ciphers. And what if these stories were blended together, but not done in the Zodiac Manson Connection way, but done in just a fictional concept? And Killer on a White Horse is set in the state of Maryland, not California, set in the contemporary times, not the 60s, But if anybody would like to hear this, the audiobook is on YouTube for free, as well as the second story, the Barry Albert tapes. And the third book was called White Horse Strong, all available on YouTube for free. There's a playlist for that. And I will be getting the fourth story in the White Horse Killer saga very soon. But Robert, great question. Lacey says the Manson murders is a rabbit hole for years. Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the reasons why is because the people in the Manson family abandoned whatever they genuinely thought, and they had to take up this other identity of, well, drugs made me weird, so I don't remember the time when I was on drugs, and I blame the drugs. I take full responsibility for everything. I want to be held accountable. Oh, yeah, but it was the drugs, and it was all Charlie's fault. So they had to change the story that they were singing. And Cat Daddy Steve says, the LaBianca murders were probably just a somewhat random killing, driving around the neighborhood, and they just picked a house as it was set from the back of the street, and the turnout to park the Manson car. Okay. Now, Cat Daddy Steve, are you entertaining the theory that this was all about arranging a set of copycat murders to get someone out of prison? Because as I said, Tate LaBianca Hinman Shea murders. First, we have the murder of Gary Hinman, and somebody was driving Gary Hinman's car, and his name was Bobby Beausoleil. Bobby Beausoleil goes to jail, and he calls the Spawn Ranch where the Manson family lives, and they get worried that he's going to squeal, he's going to talk, or do something incriminating, or do something that is going to vilify somebody or everyone in the Manson family. But at the same time, they also value him, and they think that he is an important member of the Manson family. So they launch this plan to commit a series of murders, copycat crimes that are similar to the Gary Hinman murder. So couldn't be this guy. He was incarcerated when it happened. And there could be that. Now, Charles Manson did state in the Ronald Reagan Jr. interview that Lino LaBianca was killed for the black phone book that I said. Was he telling the truth or not? Who knows? Excuse me. I've always thought that this copycat murder plan was very excessive. The same way that driving fear into somebody's heart was very excessive. I've always thought that it was a little bit too far out, because they wouldn't have had to kill 7 people. They could have just gone after a much, much less, less showcase-worthy set of crimes. They didn't have to be so excessive if they were just committing copycat murders. It's always made me think that there's an ulterior motive. Libya says, the LaBiancas were targeted because Manson had been in the house next door. And it's something about how he remembered that there was a boat in the driveway. And now, Libius, is this also because you're thinking the LaBiancas may have had money and the reputation gets around that even though they were not the most glamorous individuals, Rosemary LaBianca was very good at playing the stock market, and she was actually very wealthy. She had earned a lot through her investments. So I thought that these people had money. And this is the stuff that Brian Davis always comes back to on the Tate LaBianca radio program, that Charles Manson didn't want to kill people. Charles Manson didn't want to start a race war called Helter Skelter. Charles Manson didn't want any of that stuff. What did Charles Manson truly want? A music career? No. He wanted money. That would have solved all of his problems. And on the notion of starting this race war, that's mostly a fictitious story that's been concocted from people like Paul Watkins, former member of the family, Vincent Bugliosi, the prosecutor. But about Charles Manson only wanting money and not wanting the record deal, I had the opportunity to interview Brian Davis here on this channel. And one thing he said there was that Charles Manson doesn't even seem like he wanted to be a rock star. This whole image of he felt so cheated that he wasn't going to get the record deal. He felt so cheated that he wasn't going to get the recording contract. No. Charles Manson wanted to play his guitar around the campfire. He already has access to all the things that the rich people have without any of the stress. He can just play the guitar. He can get up and start talking and preaching. And then he can also have access to all of the women in the Manson family. So he's already doing everything that he wanted. He didn't even necessarily care too much about the record deal. But we have to differentiate that in two parts. There's also that Charles Manson might have cared more about people taking his music and reshaping it and taking advantage of him, cheating him, making money off that. That's a different story. Two separate issues. And Robert H. says, I've not seen The Ghostwriter. Thank you for recommending it. My favorite movie from him, aside from Rosemary's Baby, is The Tenant. Not sure if you have seen that one. He actually directs and stars in it. I have not seen that one, though. But Robert H., you seem to be quite familiar with Polanski. Now, what's the name of that film that he did? Is it called Possession or Possessed? It's one of his earliest films. And it's just kind of like a mediocre psychological thriller. The ending to that one was absolutely amazing. All right, though, and I would also like to drop the announcement that Black Box Online Radio is going to be going through some changes. From now on, this show will be available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, iTunes, where you get your podcasts. You can download Black Box Online Radio, take it on the go anywhere and anyhow. You can also use YouTube Premium, but that's through a different setup. And the older episodes will be still archived on Launchpad 1. So a lot of different places where you can download BBOR. Be one of the thousands of people that has downloaded this program. Going out for a walk, evening drive, take BBOR on the go with you. And I'll share some more about that on some of the upcoming episodes. And every Wednesday I do an episode about Jack the Ripper, and every Friday about D.B. Cooper. And of course, you're listening to True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. And Casbah is here. And Casbah says, by the way, the Zodiac is Cooper. People are right. I'm going to chill with Snoopy for a second while I mull over your statement. Now, Casbah, are you saying that the Zodiac Killer and D.B. Cooper are the same person, the stuff that I was talking about on the most recent Zodiac Monday? I don't know what's up with that. But as far as, and Casbah says he's also the Gardner art thief. You mean the person who committed the art heist at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston, where, like, the Rembrandt painting was stolen? Storm on the Sea of Galilee, right? The biggest art heist in U.S. history. $300 million of artwork was stolen from the Isabella Stewart Gardner Art Museum. You think the Zodiac Killer did that? Well, Casbah, I approach ideas with an open mind. You can put something in the comment section if in the live chat if you want to discuss this. Maybe you can share, why do you think the Zodiac Killer was D.B. Cooper and the art heist perpetrator, for lack of a better term? Bear in mind that there were multiple perpetrators in the Isabella Stewart Gardner heist. 2 people wearing disguises, and they also disguised themselves as police officers, if I recall correctly, although it's been quite a long time since I've done that one. Cat Daddy Steve says, yes, Manson had been to the LaBianca neighbor's house, possibly picked the wrong house, or LaBianca was a backup second choice. Now, if it's just done because he's been there before and he knows that these people might have money, that I can get. That I can wrap my head around. However, when it comes to this concept of just, I'm just going to commit a series of murders and blame it on black people to start a race war, no. But, who really cares about the truth? Because Vincent Bugliosi went on to write Helter Skelter. He had help, but he wrote it, right? And Helter Skelter, about the Manson family and the trial, went on to be the best-selling true crime book of all time. Vincent Bugliosi also waited a while to write his second book, which is called And the Sea Will Tell, which is about the story of an individual who just gets the name Buck Dwayne Walter and committing the murders of the Graham couple. And they made a movie about this, which you guys can watch online for free. I saw it last night, actually, and The Sea Will Tell, based on Vincent Bugliosi's book. And the female murder suspect in that one is given the fictitious name Jennifer Jenkins. Her real name was Stephanie Stearns. And It is an amazing story, very, very entertaining movie because I like crime dramas. If you guys can't tell, I talk about them a lot and the stories that are related to these true crime cases. But they made Vincent Bugliosi look like a pure saint in that movie, and the sea will tell available here on YouTube. Vincent Bugliosi was not a saint. And this is the stuff that Tom O'Neill really wanted to hunker down on. When people are just listening to everything that Vincent Bugliosi was saying, taking it as gospel, the man had terrible credibility. He was a liar, he was a cheater, and, putting pressure on witnesses to lie for him. The kind of guy who cheated on his wife, got his mistress pregnant, beat her up so badly she had a miscarriage, thought his wife was cheating with the milkman, so he went after him. You guys have heard all those stories. But best-selling true crime book of all time, right? It's a messed up world. It's a sick, sad world. And we have a comment here from Mr. JSV who says Eric Eulis has some good videos on the Gardner heist. Ah, yes, Eric Eulis is one of the most famous DB Cooper researchers. I did not know that he also followed the Isabella Stewart Gardner heist. I would love to check them out because, to the credit of Eric Eulis, he has put forward an effort to solve the DB Cooper case, and it seems like the efforts that he's using aren't necessarily coming out of left field or anything. He's just saying he wants access to the evidence to do independent DNA testing and forensic analysis with the suspects that he has in mind, particularly Vince Peterson, to try and find out if they can solve the DB Cooper mystery. Oh, Robert H. says you might be talking about the Roman Polanski movie Repulsion. That is the first movie in a so-called apartment trilogy, with Rosemary's Baby being the second and The Tenant being the third. Repulsion, that sounds right. I was thinking like Possession. No, because Possessed is a different film. Actually, I knew it wasn't that, but maybe Possession. Okay, Repulsion, that sounds right. Very good psychological drama. I loved Rosemary's Baby. It's different. It's different. Now, Roman Polanski did some bad things. He committed the rape of an individual named Samantha Geimer, who went on to write her own book called The Girl. She was 13 years old at the time, and I'm not even going to go through the details, but it's all documented and recorded. And Roman Polanski doesn't even necessarily dispute it. So he did something very bad, and I don't think he was a good person. I don't necessarily think he had much of a conscience. He might have even been a sociopath, but he was good at making movies. And the actress Kim Cattrall worked with Roman Polanski, and she talked a little bit about how he worked, that even when he was in his 70s, he was the kind of director who is like looking at the movie set and saying, no, wait, that character would not arrange their closet like that. And it's like 10 o'clock at night, they've been filming all day, and he starts rearranging the closet, and like the assistant director says, but we're not even going to show the closet in the shot. And he's saying, no, the character would not arrange their closet like that, because everything had to be done to that exact specific parameter. And that is a characteristic of psychopathic and sociopathic behavior, obsessing over details. Maybe he's a sociopath, but that's what Kim Cattrall was talking about with her experience of him, is that he cared greatly about creating the movies that he was working on and putting in not only 100%, 110% of effort. So, the next one here we have, Manson's followers definitely believed in Helter Skelter. Doesn't mean Manson did. Okay, Libius, but the take on that Brian Davis has shared is that they talked about it, and there was definitely discussions about Helter Skelter. Paul Watkins wrote all of them down in his book, My Life with Charles Manson. We're going to put machine guns on our dune buggies. We're going to drive out into the desert. We're going to live in a bottomless pit, and we're going to grow our numbers to 144,000. And when we come back, the race war will have ended. But what Brian Davis's interpretation of that was that that's just people standing around the campfire telling stories like, what would you do if you were the king of the world? And I saw a YouTube video about this, and what's the name of the channel? So Sharon or something like that? And they said that back in those days, if you were able to talk like a guru, you would get a following. And I think that Manson put a lot more thought in that, but he definitely talked like a guru. He definitely had followers. He definitely talked like a leader. Dr. Todd Grande even said that Charles Manson was not charismatic, but extremely confident. And we have Lacey says, "Have you looked into the Jeffrey McDonald case? I would love your input." No, I have not, but I can do that. I can do that on a future live stream. Lacey, Jeffrey McDonald, and Lacey says the bug was a narcissist. The bug referring to Vincent Bugliosi. Yeah, absolutely. I think to get to Vincent Bugliosi's level of power, fame, and to be as bold as he would have had to have been a terrible narcissist. But if you do watch the movie and the sea will tell, it just portrays him as the nicest, kindest, well meaning attorney in the world. Just sitting with his wife and oh, another long day at work, honey. Oh, Vince, we've been married 23 years. Oh, yeah, everything's great. Just like the nicest guy in the world. I don't believe that for a second. And Mr. JSV has a comment about Eric Eulis and the Gardner heist. Yes, he interviews the girlfriend of one of the suspects. Very interesting. Check it out, Ned. There could be some good stuff for True Crime Talk Radio. And Cat Daddy Steve says, Vincent lost my respect. First, he claimed that Oswald was a lone communist gunman before I found he was a lying cheat and a stalker. Well, that's the thing with Vincent Bugliosi. He was a prosecutor, he was an attorney, and he is somebody who's going to look at this the way that an attorney does, the way that that evil Nancy Grace does. And the way that attorneys approach true crime cases is they decide what angle they're going to play. Well, is it true or false? Who cares? We're going to make Charles Manson look like he was going to start a race war. Was Oswald actually the lone gunman? Well, who cares? I've decided that this is the theory that I'm going to explore, and this is the theory that I'm going to go with. And when you're looking at a true crime case from our position, from the people in the audience, I don't care what the attorney is going to do. I don't care that the attorney wants to win, and neither do you. What about what actually happened? Let's say, hypothetically, there was a Zodiac Killer suspect who was caught, handcuffed, 87 years old, being taken in, and the prosecutor was going to say, this man was guilty. He was the Zodiac Killer. Well, yeah, prosecutor, you're going to say that no matter what. Did he actually do it or not? What if you got the wrong guy? That's the stuff that you and I would be curious about it. I know, whoever you are listening to that, you would have a similar experience. And we have one from Chris S. I was wondering if the D.B. Cooper case, if the police ever took suspect pictures to be identified to the stewardesses who dealt with them on the plane. Now, they definitely have viewed suspects. And as I understand, Drew Beeson even presented the photos of Ted Braden to Tina Mucklow, the stewardess who worked with D.B. Cooper, worked with the stewardess who interacted with D.B. Cooper. The other one that mostly did was Florence Schaffner. Thanks, Snoopy. And as far as I know that Tina Mucklow, according to Drew Beeson, said that she thought that that could have been the match, but a lot of time has gone by. There are a lot of conflicts in the D.B. Cooper sketches, and I forget if somebody made the comment about Tina Mucklow or Florence Schaffner, but they just said that they don't want to deal with it anymore. They don't want to look at photos. It's been too long. They're just not 100% sure. I would hope that they've looked at the suspects, especially in the earlier years. Excuse me. But more importantly, with Tina Mucklow and Florence Schaffner, their takes on D.B. Cooper are quite different. When Florence Schaffner was given the opportunity to have a composite sketch drawn for a TV show in the 1980s, which I believe was Unsolved Mysteries, well, what did D.B. Cooper look like? Why don't you tell our composite sketch artist? They created Composite Sketch C. Looks nothing like the other ones. One of them has like the pointed jawline, the Bing Crosby sketch. Then there's the one with the wide nose. And then there's Composite C, which has a hairline that practically comes down to the brow ridge and like a very big, long nose. Their recollections are different, but yeah, I would love to know what they think. Chris S. Oh, yeah, it was from Chris. And Gina Gie is here. Finally caught Ned live. Good morning. Hey, Gene, good morning to you too. Welcome to True Crime Talk Radio. Tyler Scott says, Evil Nancy Grace. Well, I talk about this a lot on Black Box Online Radio. I don't like Nancy Grace for the reasons that I just listed off. That she is somebody who just chooses her side. Well, that came out of nowhere. Chooses her side and is acting like her side has to be right because she's chosen it. The way that an attorney is going to defend their client to the end, to conclusion. But that's not important to me. And the problem is, Nancy Grace is not an attorney anymore. She's a broadcaster. She doesn't have to do that. It's impractical. Bugliosi, same story actually when he's writing books, making comments about the Kennedy assassination. He didn't have to misrepresent things. He did anyway, though. Tyler says 100% agree. The other reason why I don't like Nancy Grace is she hosted a podcast which covered some really good stories. Not only true crime cases, but also missing persons cases. And she had this male co-host, and I don't know his name, but she would just start yelling at him and berating him. Oh no! Oh no! Don't you ever say that again! And people are also just like in the comment section, why does she yell at this guy that's doing her research? He's, like for things that are just very, very unprovoked and very, very obviously, like non-confrontational. And also, she had, one time she started yelling at that guy because he made the, just ask the question that somebody disappeared and he said, now, is it possible that this missing person had a connection to a drug dealer because of the type of behavior that she had? Like she had a hidden cell phone that nobody knew about and meeting people in strange places. And he said that he thought that sounded like she was meeting a drug dealer, and she just flipped out on him. The reason why she got mad about that, like people are just also saying, well, somebody went missing, hidden cell phone, strange meetings in dark places with people. Maybe they did have a drug connection. Like, why would you get mad about that? Because she says that type of reasoning is not admissible in a court of law. Well, we're not in a court of law. We're in the courtroom of what actually happened. And this is one of the reasons why I follow true crime cases. And it's just about, you have the opportunity to analyze the facts, and you are not limited by these barriers and parameters. I mean, imagine if the lawyers like Nancy Grace and Vincent Bugliosi were thinking, you know what? I'm a prosecutor. I don't think the guy is guilty. I give up. Yeah, he can go free. You can't do that. But if you're just watching a true crime documentary, you can make those types of determinations. Oh, hey, wait a second. I think that person's innocent. And you can voice your opinions and voice what you think. And you can also go beyond opinions. You can analyze the facts. And Tyler Scott says she cares about the stories, not the people she drags through the mud. Oh, no, not at all. She doesn't care about them at all. And that's one of the things that was so hard about her TV show to watch, like HLM, when there would be guests on who maybe have lost somebody in a tragedy. I saw this one where she interviewed the driver of a limo, and it wasn't a family member, but one of the passengers died in the limousine, and she is just like, just going off on him and insulting him. And, well, now wait a second. Do we know if he was guilty or not? Did he do something wrong? This guy's also been through some tragedy himself, and if you aren't completely sure that somebody is guilty, why do you just have to accost them like that? And Cat Daddy Steve says, Nancy has a strange personality. Well, I definitely think her personality is suitable for being a prosecutor. Doesn't mean I would want to be around her. The concept of being the ruthless attorney and just focused on winning at all costs. And this is something else that I heard in a courtroom drama once. reevaluate your ethical compass later. Meaning during the trial, no holds barred. Maybe that something that carried on with her. But in all reality, this is the Zodiac Manson Hour, and anything you guys would like to share about the Zodiac Manson connection, you can throw that in the chat. And it's also anyone who's just joining now. If you have not subscribed to Black Box Online Radio yet, you can hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And also, please feel free to visit buymeacoffee.com/blackboxnet88. But you guys know all about that stuff. Ultimately, I started out the episode by talking about Howard Davis, the author of the Zodiac Manson Connection, who recently passed away. And as Ray Grant said at the beginning, Howard Davis was very influential on a lot of Zodiac researchers. Even me. I mean, I've read statements from Howard Davis multiple times on the channel. And even though I ultimately disagreed with his theory, I just had to point out that he did a lot of good things. And he did a lot of honest things. Because if you were to get online and read about issues involving Howard Davis, there is a lot of trash talk. I may have even reiterated some of it here on BBOR. But I think that, he wasn't the evil person that some channels make him out to be. On Zodiac Monday, I might do a direct response to the video from Bad Things True Crime, because they're talking about the Zodiac Manson connection, and they're listing all of these reasons why the Zodiac Manson connection is wrong. However, even somebody like me, who doesn't endorse it, would just look at it and say, I don't believe you guys. I don't think your analysis is right. When they're saying that there's no way that somebody could go from Las Vegas to San Francisco, commit the Stein murder, and then fly back to Las Vegas and drive to Death Valley in 24 hours. And I'm like, 24 hours? Yes, you could physically do that. And that is more or less one issue that the Zodiac Manson does explore. On October 11th of 1969, Paul Stein was murdered. He was the final victim of the Zodiac Killer. And Howard Davis believes that Bruce Davis, no relation, shot and killed Paul Stein. Now, there are some other problems with this, but he then would have gone from the Stein murder scene to the airport, took a flight to Las Vegas, and then took a car to the Barker Ranch in Death Valley. So, could you do that in one day? I don't see why not. Do I think that that's what happened? No. Bruce Davis was arrested on October 12th of 1969 at the Barker Ranch in Death Valley, but Howard Davis points out in the evening, it's 24 hours. I mean, is that physically possible? I suppose. Chris S. says, hit the like button for Ned's time and devotion to the unsolved. Hey, Chris, thank you so much. If I were one of those live streamers who had the sound effects board, I would give you one of them right now. Thanks! And they just have the amazing sound drop or something like that, or the people that got stuff going across the screen. But yes, thank you everybody for tuning in to True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. One more time, you can drop anything you want in the live chat about the Zodiac Manson connection as we wind down for this Zodiac Manson hour. And thank you to everybody who was asking questions about the Manson family. I'll just go through some of the more outrageous points that I've recognized in regards to the Manson family. Some of the myths out there, if you will. Number one, Charles Manson may have been a psychopath. He may have been somebody who was only concerned with himself, but he only cared about playing his guitar around the campfire or something like that and having sex with people. But I don't necessarily believe he was the programmed to kill type of serial killer cult leader that people make him out to be. That's one. Number two, there was a witness who testified for the prosecution named Linda Kasabian, and she might be one of the most evil people out there. Again, citing Brian Davis, because he has done multiple episodes exploring this, just about how it appears that Linda Kasabian, who she starts out as the driver headed toward Cielo Drive, that she's the one who takes the credit card from Rosemary LaBianca and is supposed to hide it. It's the wallet, she's supposed to hide it in a bathroom to make it look like the Black Panthers did it. Someone from a black neighborhood stole it. But she put it in the tank of a toilet where no one could possibly find it, meaning that most likely she was going to come back and use whatever was in the wallet, like the credit cards. So she's just doing this all for her own volition. And other things that people challenge. Did Tex Watson actually walk into the house where Wojtek Frykowski and Sharon Tate were and say, I'm the devil and I'm here to do the devil's work. I'm here to do the devil's business? Did that really happen? Or were they looking for drugs and then these people didn't have any, so they went crazy and berserk on them? It's a mystery. It really is. And William Kane says, William Kane always hits the like button. Hey, thank you so much. Like I said, this episode is winding down, but I will be back live on Thursday. Live streams start at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. And please tune in tomorrow for Ripper Wednesday, while I'll be doing an episode about Jack the Ripper. And that's going to be a big one. To all of you who follow the Jack the Ripper case, that will be a big one. And Friday, of course, talking about D.B. Cooper. And Tyler says, not to dismiss Manson, but I think he was more of a troll. Oh, yes, he was a bad person. I don't think he was a good person at all. Yeah, I think he was just jerking around interviewers for years. And like, did you have a terrible childhood? A child doesn't know what terrible is. And just saying stuff that's just like talking in circles. And Cat Daddy Steve says, Linda Kasabian didn't give off a lying, deceptive vibe. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's the same with Leslie Van Houten. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Patricia Krenwinkel, purely self-serving. Susan Atkins, spawn of Satan. She's the actual devil incarnate. And she knew it. But what happened with the Manson family was that they were sentenced to death. Then their sentences were commuted to life in prison. So they're all like, we now have a chance at parole. Life in prison with the possibility of parole. So they're thinking, we're going to just try to make ourselves look like model inmates so we can get out, even Tex. Leslie Van Houten did get out after 50 some odd years. And the Manson family also adopted a very bizarre tactic in the courtroom. The women, Patricia Krenwinkel, Susan Atkins, and Leslie Van Houten, where they just began to act like little girls. They like coloring and scribbling on papers, being very silly. Leslie Van Houten never grew out of it. And strangely, though, all of that stuff was in the movie And the Sea Will Tell, based on Vincent Bugliosi's other book of the same name. And the defendant, who was also a woman, does the same stuff, being really silly, like making flirtatious gestures at another lawyer. And it's almost just this defense mechanism of, okay, firstly, number one, they're going to act really weird. Number two, they're going to act really childish. Number three, they're going to try and act like model individuals so that people don't think they're dangerous. Deceptive tactics? Perhaps. Now, Linda Kasabian was not someone who would have been sitting at the defendant's table, because, as I said, she testified for the prosecution. I think almost everyone in the Manson family was deceptive to a certain degree, though. But that's all for me now. All right, everybody. One more time, you can follow the show on Facebook, Black Box Online Radio. My personal Facebook is Ned DeHaan, and I release reels and shorts every day on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, BlackBoxNed88 over on Instagram. Anybody can write the show at blackboxonlineradio@AOL.com. You can also get me on Facebook. I already said that. You guys know what to do. And that will be all for me now. And I'll see you on Thursday for a new episode of True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. Until next time.